Hello, my name is Dr. Kirk A. Nooks, and I serve as President and CEO of the Council on Occupational Education. And this is what we're calling the President's Podcast. It's an opportunity to come to you and bring you content featuring the brightest minds, creative innovators, and educational leaders with content to share. Today, I am tickled and I am proud to join by one of the brightest minds I know, Dr. Gwen Sutton. She serves as president of TCAT Memphis, and she is our commission chair. So she not only is wearing a hat as a college president, but she also is wearing the hat as a commission chair. And I'm excited and delighted to welcome her today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Gwen Sutton. I know you will hear the claps going on, You know, Dr. Sutton, you have been at TCAT Memphis for quite some time. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your day-to-day and how long you've been at the institution?
All right, thank you so much, and appreciate you all having me here on today. I have been with the Tennessee Board of Regents for now 23 years, and my day-to-day encompasses what I did this morning. I was traveling to my different campuses because I do have 3 locations, and I am overseeing some capital maintenance projects, have about 100 employees here on staff, and over 27 different technical programs. So I'm loving what I do. I've had the opportunity to work at 2 TCATs, one here at TCAT Memphis and also at the TCAT Ripley location.
Excellent. So, in other words, she is busy, 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 like many of our leaders. But again, thank you for taking the time to spend with me today and also to serve as our commission chair. And as our commission chair, you know the commission is, I'll call it the small c, and I'm going to speak more about that later on. But this is the board that oversees, if you want to call it, the accreditation actions of the commission. They work with the strategic plan. This is one of the 2 groups recognized by the Department of Education as a decision-making body for our accrediting agency. So it's a big role. And again, for her to balance both her institution and the commission work is just a testament to her strength and fortitude and leadership. Well, today we are going to be talking about something that's near and dear to my heart. It's all about the strategic plan. And when you think about the strategic plan, this is something that we've worked on for quite some time upon my arrival, almost 3 years ago. And we have something we're calling Strategy 2030, a plan for the quality, integrity, and continuous improvement of education that works. So my questions to start off, Dr. Sutton, is as chair of the commission, how does Strategy 2030, our 5-year strategic plan, how does it shape the direction of the council's work, particularly in advancing quality, integrity, and continuous improvement across accredited institutions?
While I'll say that's a great place to start. One, because the strategic plan really sets the tone for everything we do as a commission. Through COE, the plan is not just a document, we consider it our framework. And it shapes how we define quality, how we uphold integrity, and how we ensure continuous improvement across all of our institutions. And what I appreciate most about the plan is that it acknowledges where we are right now in this instance. Everyone knows the workforce education is evolving. It's evolving quickly at a very rapid pace. And institutions are being asked to be more responsive, more aligned with industry, and more intentional about our outcomes. This plan allows us to lead in that space rather than just react to it. So we're being very proactive. It also ensures that our standards, our processes, and even our engagement with our institutions are all aligned to a clear and consistent vision. And ultimately, I would think that it reinforces that quality is not static, integrity is not assumed, and improvement is not occasional. So it's continuous and it is expected.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sutton. When you're thinking about that across 500 institutions and 43 different states and 4 different sectors, I mean, it's a lot to try to create one strategic plan for so many members. But I remember as we were talking about the plan, it was important for the strategic planning committee to make sure that this plan was grounded in context. And when you look at the plan, you see the opening sort of section talk about public policy and affordability and value. You see it referenced judicial rulings and political influence and federal and state funding. And I can go on and on. It's like we were looking into a crystal ball. So when you put all of that together, and then, like you mentioned, when you think about our current context, could you speak to the current strategic priorities and how those priorities are translating into meaningful action for member institutions?
Absolutely. And in essence, those priorities are very much an extension of the vision. So right now, we're focused on strengthening our institutional effectiveness, improving our clarity and usability of our standards and resources, and also we're ensuring that our processes remain both rigorous and accessible. But what matters the most is how those priorities are showing up for our institutions. And what I mean is that we're seeing more intentional communications, clear guidance, more opportunities for institutions to engage with commissioners outside of that traditional accreditation cycle. Because, for decades, we really only saw the commission during that accreditation cycle. So there's a strong emphasis on consistency as well. And institutions should understand what is expected. Those expectations should be applied fairly and consistently across the board. And for me, consistency builds trust. That trust strengthens the relationship between the commission and the member institutions, because I serve as chair, but I'm also a member institution. And when that relationship is strong, the work becomes more effective for everybody involved.
Now, you mentioned something just a bit ago about the work of the commission, and I mentioned earlier on to start off that there's something I affectionately call the big C and the little c, and the big C is what I refer to as the council. That's the overall organization. That's all the members coming together. When we think about the big C, we're thinking about the business session at the annual meeting. We're thinking about the delegates who are voting. And that's the body, if you want to call it the Council on Occupational Education, that makes everything go. But as I mentioned earlier, the council, the voting delegates, they cannot get together on a daily basis. So they elect the small c, which is the commission. These are 20 individuals who come together to govern the organization and make critical decisions for those who may not fully see the day-to-day work. What does the commission's role look like in practice, and how does it ensure that standards are both rigorous and responsive to the evolving needs of the field?
Wow, that's an important question, because most of the commission's work is not always visible. It's very much behind the scenes, but I will tell you it's very deliberate. At its core, the work of the commission is grounded in careful review and thoughtful decision making. We're reviewing institutional self-studies, analyzing site visit reports, examining data, and engaging in detailed discussions before any action is taken. Nothing is rushed, nothing is taken at face value. There's a process, and that process is followed consistently by all commissioners. We're responsible for making accreditation decisions that carry real significance for our institutions. So we have to be intentional in our work, and those decisions are not made lightly. All decisions by the commission are grounded in evidence. That's evidence that's aligned with our established standards and shaped through collective deliberation amongst all of our commissioners, sometimes very lengthy deliberations. And I'll say another critical part of the work is maintaining and refining those standards themselves. So we find ourselves constantly asking ourselves, are our standards clear? Are they measurable? Are they aligned with what students and employers truly need today? And just as important, we're working to ensure consistency. Institutions should not have to determine whether or not they're confident that expectations are applied fairly, regardless of the size of the institution, location, or even the programs that are being offered. And this act requires discipline, attention to detail, and also a shared commitment to uphold both the letter of the spirit of the standards, and at the same time, we have to be responsive. Responsiveness matters. And we're not operating in a static environment. So workforce is shifting, as I stated before, educational models are evolving, technology continues to reshape how instruction is delivered. So the balance we maintain is simply this: standards are strong, have to maintain that strength to ensure that quality and accountability is there, yet they need to be flexible enough to remain relevant. And that balance is not achieved in one instance. It's maintained through our ongoing reviews, dialogue, and our willingness to adjust when needed.
You know, you mentioned something a moment ago, and you described the work that the commission does, and that the decisions are not entered into lightly. And I can attest firsthand, seeing the commission struggle with some of the more heart-wrenching decisions, because they're thinking about students, and the faculty and staff who are involved. But like you mentioned, there are standards, there are policies, there are expectations that we do have to set forth in the name of quality. And I just remember back to a lot of those meetings as we would discuss some very heavy topics, and seeing the commission have to take some heavy action. So again, I applaud and support you all in your work, and your commitment to excellence. And that leads us to our next question. As you mentioned, these standards and our policies and our practices, they need to evolve, and they need to remain relevant. And with our vision of becoming the standard for education that works, that means things that may have been so years ago may not be so now. In this environment of accountability, there are conversations taking place. In fact, right now, for those who are viewing the video in the next week or so, we know that the department will be engaging in a negotiated rulemaking about accreditation during this month and the next. You may be viewing this podcast a year from now, and by that time, the new regulations would have already been laid out, and quite frankly, maybe even implemented. And you would see a sudden shift in what we're doing as an agency. And it's not always about us. Sometimes it's about the pressures that are on us from external. So as expectations around accountability and student outcomes continue to evolve, how is the commission navigating that balance between maintaining high standards and supporting institutions in meeting them? Because sometimes for these institutions, they're like, wow, this is hard. This is difficult work.
Yeah, that balance is essential. And Dr. Nooks, as I stated before, is something that we're very intentional about. There's a growing national focus on accountability and student outcomes, and that's appropriate at this time. So institutions should be able to demonstrate impact, but accountability does not exist without support. So our role is to uphold those high standards while ensuring that our institutions have the guidance, the resources, and the clarity needed to meet those expectations. So it's clear support. And, that includes clear communication, transparent processes, and access to tools that support improvement. So we do understand that our institutions are operating in very complex environments. So the responsibility is not only to evaluate the performance, but to support the institutions as they work through these challenges and continue to improve. I think that's how we maintain both our credibility and the effectiveness throughout the processes.
That's excellent points right there. All right. I think you're going to try to flip the tables on me in a second, but before you do, I've got one final question. As you look into the future, tell me, what do you see as the most significant opportunity and perhaps challenges for the commission, and how should institutions begin preparing for what's ahead?
Wow. Okay. So there's a great deal of opportunity ahead for the commission and for our institutions. So we're seeing increased attention on student outcomes, stronger alignment between education and workforce needs, and then that's that continued integration of technology into both instruction and accreditation. So these are all positive developments, but at the same time, the pace of change is accelerating so fast. So expectations are increasing, and our institutions are being asked to do more, often with limited resources. So preparation will be key. Institutions should be strengthened in how they use data, ensuring that their programs are aligned with workforce demands, and building those systems that support continuous improvement. And I would say, from a commissioner's perspective, we will continue to evolve alongside them in a supportive manner, providing both that structure and that leadership that they need to navigate what comes next.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So what questions might you have for me? I mean, we're talking about the strategic plan. Are there areas that I could probably weigh in and add a little bit of texture and context?
Sure, absolutely. So, there's this new software system that people are talking about called EDvera.
EDvera.
So, so I want to know, where are we at with EDvera at this point, and what should we be expecting moving forward?
Thank you for that question. EDvera is top of mind for so many individuals and members. Those of you who have been members for quite some time, you remember my council, and I recall coming to my first conference and people sharing about the hopes and aspirations that they have for my council and things they would like to see in it. And when we started to do the research, we said, it would probably be best to kind of go out into the marketplace and see who was already working in this space with similar products. And we heard from a number of state regulators and other accreditors about this system called EDvera. We partnered with them, and they actually put a product in place for us. Now, again, many of you can remember the switch from my council. You remember the days of paper submissions that you had to go to FedEx or UPS and ship things to our office. You remember that the static information that was in there in my council, and you really couldn't get too many pieces out of it. Well, believe it or not, June 2026 will actually 2 years that we've launched EDvera. June 2026 will be 2 years. And we started with just getting your credentials and logging in. Then we asked you to update your directory information. And it was more than just your name. We wanted you to include information like maybe your business representative or your website, your social media, different components of the institutional profile that would make it robust. We wanted to make sure that there was a real-time, if you want to call it, database that you could access from our web of our members, and we now have that. So now we're looking at, you can submit electronic documentation and applications through EDvera. Gone are the days, again, from the paper submissions or even emailing us. Everything is done through the system. You can actually see where things are in the queue as far as your applications and your reports. We have also included the ability for you to complete your self-study through EDvera. We are now able to track volunteers, their profile information, what their expertise is when it comes to different programs, and whether you're an administrator or whether you're on the academic side. We have on our side available a complete searchable institutional profile that includes financial data, that includes whether you're participating in Title IV aid. We're able to query on the staff side multiple fields and generate reports in the blink of an eye. We even have a commissioner portal that we just rolled out recently for our commissioners, so that when they're making decisions, they can quickly access information through EDvera. Now, I say all of that to say it has not gone without hiccups. And we want to thank the membership for their patience. We want to thank you for providing honest feedback. But I want to remind you, in less than 2 years, we've been able to stand up a system and provide much more usability when it comes to data. So what should you expect going forward? I think you should expect, on the membership side, additional searchable fields. I think on the membership side, you will likely be able to have an institutional Dropbox that you could probably save documents along the way. So when it comes time for your self-study, you can have a repository. I believe as an institution, you'll see over the coming, several months and years to come, you're going to see downloadable data reports that you can take and look and not necessarily compare, but have better information about your institution. So there's a lot more to come with EDvera. And as I mentioned, I always say we're not even 2 years in at this point. So stay tuned.
A lot going on again in the background with EDvera. So thank you so much for giving us that update, and looking forward to tackling some of those new roles and accesses that we have that's coming down the pike. So looking forward to that. So let's shift a little bit to something that we've been talking about, behind the scenes as institutions, about COE has a handbook for this. They have policy and rules. You have standards and conditions. You have guidelines here. So for quite some time, there's been conversation about the number of handbooks that COE has and how difficult it is to locate information, depending on what booklet that you're looking in. So I recall a reference to a technical writing project in year 2. So tell me, has there been any progress with this initiative?
Yes, Dr. Sutton, there has been not only progress but significant action. So you're right. Again, I not only heard about our system, but I also heard, Doc, there are multiple handbooks for the various sectors, and although people appreciate it, sometimes identifying information, especially between the policies and rule manual and the handbook of accreditation, sometimes it was duplicated, sometimes it was disjointed. And some of the feedback we received was, look, if you could just get a technical writer to kind of pull everything together, and we're not talking about starting over, but we're talking about making this so clean. In addition, they're also talking about, we have the handbook of accreditation, and then we've got some check sheets, and don't even get me started with the check sheets. So where we are now with this technical writing project, we've been going into background. We do have a technical writer who has been taking all of the material and synthesizing it into one handbook of accreditation for all sectors. I know some people are starting to get goosebumps. They're starting to get nervous. But yes, the goal is we will have one handbook of accreditation. It's almost in its final throes right now. So again, the writing has been going on in the background. Once we have that document in the next week or two, it will be going on to staff for a full review. And then after the staff, it's going to be going on to the Standards and Conditions Committee. If some of them are watching it now, they're like, oh, really? We're going to have more work documents? That is true. It's going to go into the Standards and Conditions Committee for their review. And then we are hoping, if everything goes according to plan, to have actual physical documents on display at the Spring Accreditation Institute later on this month. And then eventually, once we get more feedback, it will actually go on to the commission and then actually be posted online for a full review by the membership and eventually adopted sometime later on this summer. We do believe that merging those 3 handbooks into one is going to be a welcome change. Again, it's something different. The formerly known documents as check sheets will also be folded in. Again, there will be a true handbook of accreditation. You don't have to go to separate sheets to see all of the standards and the information contained. Same thing for policies and rules. We will go to the existing handbook of accreditation. We will take out all policy-related information because that handbook of accreditation right now mixes a lot of policy. So we're going to pull all of that out and place it in the policies and rules book where it should be. And now you will have a comprehensive policies and rules manual. So think about it. The handbook of accreditation will shrink slightly because you're taking out all of the heavy policy related things. And that information will be placed in a true policies and rules manual. We do anticipate, again, that all of these writing projects will be concluded late summer, and then the approvals will take place accordingly. And hopefully a year from now, just like we spoke about EDvera and mailing in documents, hard copy to the office will be a thing of the past, and we'll smile at the days we used to have 3 books, but now we're down to 1.
Right, that's what I call simplifying a handbook. So great job, sounds good, music to my ears, and I'm sure the members will love having just one resource in order to get all the information from. So let's talk a little bit about something that had people a little antsy when we were talking about a scope change and a shift in accreditation. Some people are a little nervous about this, and I want to kind of ask you a question about, with all these shifts in accreditation occurring, can you share a bit about the desire to seek a scope change for the agency?
Certainly. This is not a new topic for COE. When I arrived, if you were a historian of COE, you'd go back through previous strategic plans and the minutes and documentation, and you will see that the concept of a scope change has always been on the minds of a few of the leaders. It just never really progressed to this state. Now, when you think about broader shifts in the context for accreditation, right now we know that there are some states that have passed laws requiring people to change accreditors. We know that some newer accreditors are coming into the space. We know the ability to switch accreditors is now available. And when you're talking about current members, they have specific needs, and those needs are tied into the workforce. So if you have an institution who's offering a particular nursing degree, and they're saying, hey, Kirk, due to the workforce needs, I honestly need to offer the baccalaureate in order to be responsive to my workforce, in order to support my students who have already started with me and they're, finishing with me and they like to continue on, to allow former students to come back and get up to that level. And not only that, Dr. Sutton, I know we talk about the baccalaureate, but for some other members, it might just be the associate's degree. They might want to offer the transfer associates in different areas. This is about continuous improvement. So again, this is not a new concept, but it's giving life to being responsive to the needs of our membership. Now, I also want to say this. Some people will hear this and say, well, all of a sudden, COE is no longer going to be the accreditor that's focused on career and technical education. I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. That is who we are. That's in our DNA. We will not change from that. This is part of, again, the evolution of trying to support some of our members. In fact, I don't even believe all 500 members would, if you want to call it, offer degrees at a higher level. So just consider it. Right now that there's going to be, I'm making up a number, 15% or 20% of our membership who might pursue this. And I want to go on the record. This is for public and non-public alike. Well, what do you mean, Dr. Nooks? Well, I can tell you right now, the next step for us in this process is to go to the Spring Accreditation Institute and work with a group of institutions that we're calling the study group. The commission graciously authorized us to continue the path to move forward on this scope change journey in March. But the next step is identifying, who will be successful if we move forward with this plan. We would have to ask, permission from the Department of Education. So again, this is not a 1, 2, 3 easy process. This is going to be a thoughtful process. We want to use a measured approach. Again, we're working with a group of schools right now, both public and private. Some seeking the associate level changes and others might be seeking the baccalaureate. But we're going to do this in a way that hopefully when it comes to the end of this year, we will receive some positive information and be able to progress with a scope change.
Okay, and thank you for recognizing the Department of Education, because I don't know if all the members know that we have to report to the Department of Education. They're our accrediting body.
That's right. That's correct.
With this accreditation work that you're doing and scope change, the Department of Education is also in the process of making some changes and elevating the student outcomes conversation.
Right.
So how is COE preparing for this type of change? Because we know that with Department of Education, there are some changes in the departments and things are being dismantled and things are being shifted to different areas. So how is COE preparing for this work?
Yeah, COE is preparing for this work in a number of ways. Again, like you mentioned, we're looking at ourselves in the mirror. We are truly trying to see where we are and what we need to do to remain relevant in the conversation. The Department of Education is working with the information provided by President Trump in his executive order, calling for a higher level of focus on student success indicators. Now, as COE, we already have certain student success indicators that's a part of our standards. So we're interested in completion. We are interested in placement. We're interested in licensing, and we actually allow for our members to provide us that data on an annual basis to make sure that they are doing what they say they're doing on behalf of students. Students do come to complete, but at the same time, students come for placement at a job. And for those who require licensure, they want to have that. So we have those standards in place, but we should not rest at just simply having those measurements in place. What we want to do is look at those measurements to see if they're still relevant. That's why we've created a CPL task force that they have been working together since December of last year to ask ourselves the question, to what extent is the 60, 70, 70 still relevant? Does that need to change? What other new, if you want to call it, measurements do we need to consider? Should there be something along the lines of return on investment? Should there be something along the lines of looking at student retention? These are the topics and issues the CPL task force is currently reviewing, and they are close. I'm telling you, I've sat through some of the meetings, and I believe the membership at the end will say, you know what, this is pretty helpful work. But stay tuned. Again, there's going to be a preview at the Spring Accreditation Institute, and we believe by September of this year, a full report should be coming out for the membership.
Okay, thank you. So as I wrap up my last question here, and I mentioned earlier that the strategic plan is not a document, it's a framework. So everything we've discussed aligns with what you're doing with the vision and the mission of the strategic plan. So tell me, how can our member institutions continue to receive and access information on this framework strategic plan?
Well, there are a number of ways you can access information. The easiest way is to go to our website, www.council.org. And if you go in the upper left-hand corner and you click the About Us tab, there will be a drop down. And I believe this is second to last, menu item. You'll see strategic plan. If you click on that, it will take you to the website that houses information on the strategic plan, the history of how we came up with the plan. It will also include annual updates, which we're committed to giving you on a regular basis. So please go to the website. You can also gain information if you come to one of our conferences, the Spring Accreditation Institute or the annual meeting. Usually we're going to have some sort of topic or session on the strategic plan featured in the Spring Accreditation Institute coming up at the end of this month. Dr. Sutton and myself will be doing a fireside chat. So this is actually an expanded version of our talk, but you will have the opportunity to ask questions and engage. And last but not least, if you have any burning question on the strategic plan or what's coming up or how do we do it, please just email me at kirk.nooks@council.org and I will respond to your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nooks.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton. And again, this was an excellent opportunity to hear from our commission chair. Again, sometimes you don't get to slow down long enough to hear from the chair, but I'm delighted that we were able to host you today. My name is Dr. Kirk Nooks. Again, I serve as president and CEO of the Council on Occupational Education. This was another episode of the President's Podcast where we're talking to the brightest minds, creative innovators, educational leaders with content to share. You take care.